So, Coach, first of all, let's start with what do you think of Dave Castro's regional programming?
Actually, I like it. Personally, I think it's great. The athletes will adapt. We'll talk about the pectorals, but this is what this is for. But I think it's great because the athletes will adapt, but more importantly, it will change the way CrossFit is programmed across boxes all over the world for the next year. And that I think is priceless because it's going to allow coaches and box owners to make a more balanced programming for the year to come and hopefully years to come without feeling guilty about not programming gymnastics and barbell work, like because they're not doing CrossFit anymore. So for me, I'm extremely happy to see that. So yeah, that issue is coming up because of all the pectorals. And I gotta tell you, it's not Dave Castro's programming. So yes, I know I'm defending Dave Castro. I don't know what this world is coming to, but that was a test, and it's not Dave Castro who failed. It's the athletes. I'm sorry, that was a test of fitness, and what was shown was not a problem that it's not steroids, it's not shoulder mobility. What we saw basically is an issue I talked about in the Barbell Shock podcast a year and a half ago. Is there is no pec work in CrossFit anymore. Everything is pronated with the bar, so Olympic weightlifting, and they just don't use the pecs for anything really outside of, even push-ups is mostly on the triceps. And so that's something I touched about in a Barbell Shock podcast. And so what we saw this year, in years past, was a keeping on the dips that took even the pecs out. But on top of it, they were allowed to have the rings touching the bicep, right? So what they were doing is a flexion extension of the T-spine and using their tricep to lock out. So again, disengaging the pec completely. And this year, they had to touch the ring on the shoulder, forcing them upright, not being able to use the T-spine extension, and actually having to use their chest for once. And so what happened was an undertrained muscle was asked to go from relaxed to fully contracted in a hurry, right? For time, very, very fast, and just could not handle the load. We don't have to look anything past that. It's not that complex, and I don't know why people are going into conspiracy theories and everything. It's a muscle that popped because it is undertrained, and what has to do a work that it could not handle. And this is why we see the women not tearing, because they've always defaulted to their triceps, right, to do the dips, because they don't have as much upper body muscle. I mean, they're very, very strong, obviously, but men are stronger upper body-wise. And they were never able to use their chest as much, so they always defaulted to the lateral head of the triceps. And so for them, that particular form did not change anything, because that's how they were doing the dips anyway. So that's why you don't see any tails. But so it's the muscle that gave up.
So if we're talking about ring dips with a more strict standard range of movement for competition, some people say it was volume, it was the intensity put into it. We're seeing a lot of mainly pec major tears, right?
Yeah.
So what is the primary function of a pec major, and how can we...
Right. And so, but first of all, let's talk about the volume, because everybody's saying, well, it was competition or no. No, I know for a fact from, being behind the scenes, so to speak, that a lot of very, very good athletes tore their pec, or at least damaged their pecs when they rehearsed the workout the first time, so over a week ago or 2 weeks ago, on the first set of 21. So it shows you it's not volume and it's not competition. A lot of them got hurt just doing on the first sets of 21. So it shows you it's just like the muscle just could not handle that. And the pec major, one of his, the thing is stabilization, and it's bringing the arms, like a pec flies basically. And so that's what we saw with the ring. Suddenly they measure the bend a little bit higher. They had to go full contraction and having to squeeze the pec, especially on top like this, then going to relax and full contraction of the pec major on a muscle that is never really being trained equals a tear. But it has nothing to do with shoulder mobility. Like, if it had to do with shoulder mobility, we would see the same problem on the women, or at least some tears on the women. There have been 0 tears on the women. So what does that tell you? Like, otherwise, if we say it's shoulder mobility, that means none of the female athletes, right, have shoulder mobility issues. And we know that's not true. I know for a fact that's not true, right? So it shows you basically like the women have defaulted to their tricep, don't use their pecs, so it didn't change that much. Whereas the men, to go faster, were forced to use the pec major, which is a huge stabilizing muscle, and he was not able to handle the load, and he snapped. That's about as far as it goes. It's not the shoulder problem, and it's not Dave Castro, and it's not CrossFit. He was programming, but he was programming in the sense of the lack of frontal plain work in CrossFit, and the lack of using the pec major, always using the sagittal plane to train. That led, but that's been going around for a long time. This is just when it finally came to an end. So we'll see. Hopefully, athletes will prepare better for next year and start to work the pec major a lot more, and that will lead to less problems.
Now we seem to have a big issue here with PEDs and steroids being brought up, trying to push people around, and I don't know if they're trying to make fun of the situation.
Yeah, I don't know. First of all, the jokes are not funny. You're really kicking people when they're down. You're talking about 25 athletes, right, who worked an entire year to make it to the games. Half of them had good chances of going into it, and now they tore their pec, which, by the way, is, if it's a full tear, it's over 6 months after surgery and things like this. Even the minor tear will take weeks and weeks to come back, and then people find it funny to kick them when they're down, which I find very, let's say, not cool. But if it's PEDs, then how come none of the women tore then? Because if I remember correctly, everybody has been accusing the women of taking steroids as well. So now, are you guys now saying that it's only the men that take steroids and not the women? So no, it's not steroids. There is not that big of an issue with steroids in CrossFit. I know everybody wants all of them to be on steroids, and I got news for you, it's because you suck. It's not them that are all on steroids, it's you just not good enough to make the games. That's all. Like, I'm sure there is some of them that have taken steroids in the past and everything, but it's not all of them like everybody wants to make it. And if it was all of them, then some of the women would tear as well. So now we're saying what? That it's only the men that take steroids, not the women. And so all of them. Are you saying Valerie Verbal is on steroids because she just made the games? So what? Maddie Myers, Lauren Fisher, Regan Huckabee, all those people? Bullshit. It's not. There's not that big of an issue with steroids in CrossFit. There's anti-inflammatories and painkillers is another problem. But no, it's just not true. That's not the problem. This problem has nothing to do with steroids. It has to do with the fact that for years, CrossFit athletes have ignored the frontal plane, have not trained their pec major, and now they are put in a movement where suddenly they are forced to use it at a maximum, at great speed, so maximum contraction. The muscle is on the train and snapped. That's it. It doesn't go any further than that.
So now we're going into 1/10 of the field having pec tears. I can only imagine the amount of people that probably tried the regional workouts, maybe got hurt themselves. How would you advise them moving forward, whether they tore or not tore?
It seems like it's mostly the top guys.
Yeah.
Like I know Sam had bruising around the pec. So I think it's the guys that are capable of producing great force, right, during the movement, go very fast so they can produce a tremendous strong contraction, and they're just not ready for it. So, but in a way, I think it's, if they train correctly, that will be gone next year. It's just, all we have to do is to start to train the pec. The pec major has to catch up with all the other muscles. So I did a year ago, it was about a year ago, I did a video for Invictus, which is still online on YouTube, I believe, on their YouTube channel, where I told people to do decline dumbbell presses, just to get activation of the pec.
Right.
And that's it. And then in the templates that we do, I put cable crossover. People think I'm kidding. They say you have to go do lat pull downs and cable crossover, and they think I'm joking. I wasn't. Guess what the cable crossover is? This. Exactly the movement that you're going to do on the ring dips to stabilize. That's why I put it in for months now. And everybody thinks I'm joking. No, you're not doing bodybuilding. It's not about going on stage. The point is to get all muscle to work a certain way. We need to have the pec major working in the frontal plane. Do decline dumbbell presses because it put less stress on the pec minor. And go do cable crossover. Get the pec ready for next year. And then you won't see the number of tears like that. Over 10% of the field is a huge number. And they're all actually fairly high placed in CrossFit. So again, you're not going to tell me all of them had shoulder mobility, all those guys versus the women that don't. So
you're saying it's not a joint issue?
It's not a joint issue. I'm sorry.
But so many physios are saying it's a joint issue. No matter
how many physios are trying to sell you their shoulder mobility program and all that stuff, saying you will avoid pec tear, bullshit. I don't know why it always has to be a joint issue. It's not a joint that got hammered. It's a muscle. The muscle was not capable of handling the contraction. That's it. That's as far as it goes. You need to work all planes of movement. I've said that in the barbell show, I don't know how many times. It's always been a major problem with CrossFit. We are not working all planes of movement. Certain muscles are not being used the way they should be. So suddenly when you ask them to go from that untrained to basically a huge amount of force, they just cannot handle it. That's it. Same thing. That's why we didn't see the problem with the women, because they have always defaulted to their triceps, so they did not have to face that problem. They also go slower in the ring dips, if you guys see. That's it. That's as far as it goes. You don't have to go any further than that.
Cool.